Charles Fockaert on February 21st, 2018. I welcome all of you. I thank you for watching. I especially thank you for sharing these videos. When you share these videos, that's like the word of mouth advertising, which is the best advertising there is. I appreciate that. And I also thank you for subscribing, and I thank you for supporting this channel. And a little tip to Joe. The coffee's good, keeps me warm. It's a little nippy here. We're in the middle of winter. There is cold out, but not as bad as last week when the wind was blowing. I'd rather have the cold than the wind, and your support helps me to keep the Honda operating and the propane. And I really want to thank you very much. And I want to tell you that I pray. I pray. I don't pray as much as I should. Scripture says, pray always. Pray unceasingly. I don't do that. I admit that. But I pray as often as when I think about it. And I pray for individuals because I know that it works. There's an incident in my life that happened when I was young. I'll relate that sometime. But I learned at that time that prayer works. But right now, I just want to mention I'm praying for Tamara in Florida, Michael E. in Southern California, Michael in Wyoming, Weston in Arkansas, Joe, of course, in San Jose, and John in Tennessee, and Tall Oak in Georgia. Spread all over the country. Isn't it great that we have such a large country, large land mass? You know what? You can fit South Korea. You can fit 4 South Koreas in the state of Montana. Think about that for a minute, how big the United States actually is. I want to talk about that incident in Italy. I'm a little late, I know that, but it's not going away anytime soon. And I have a video here I'm going to go through, and I'll make some comments, and I'll put I went and found several articles, and I'll put them all on the screen. You can scroll down and pause, and you'll be able to watch them all without having to go to all the different sites. And these are about a week old. I'm sorry I didn't have a chance yesterday. Uploaded 4 new videos yesterday, and I got a little bit here on BitChute. Maybe I'll talk about that here at the end, but let's go have a look at that, what's going on there in Italy, shall we? Alrighty, this, the murder of a young woman, Italian woman, and then the murder or the shooting of 6, what they call migrants, is happening right here in Italy. And I believe it's pronounced Macerata. And I want to show you, I don't know if I can do this very well, but I want to show you the map here. I don't know if this is going to work. It might. There we go. See Libya? Libya there, and then Italy is just north of Italy. I'm sorry, just north of Libya. Now that's important because in 2011, 2012, where the quote, they say there was a civil war in Libya, and it wasn't a civil war. It was Americans and other NATO military went in, caused strife in Libya, and we all know what happened there. And they ended up regime change. Remember, who was that general that talked about the U.S. military was going to take out 7 countries in the next few years, and Libya was on that list. So Libya, Omar Gaddafi, remember, he was going to get the humanitarian award or the human rights award in March of 2011, I believe it was, or in the year that he was removed and killed, murdered. He was going to get the human rights award from the UN. Keep that in mind. Anyway, when he was in control, they his navy prevented Africans from coming through Libya and then getting into the Mediterranean Sea and into boats, and which is being paid for by George Soros. I understand that George Soros is providing the funds for these ships, and they go to the coast of Libya, and these African, quote, migrants get on these boats, and then they, rather than getting in the ships themselves, they use a towing mechanism, and they tow the migrants, the African blacks, from the heart of Africa to Greece and Italy and parts of Europe. So this guy, George Soros, is a big part of this problem, and why he gets a pass on all this, I don't know. But that's a soapbox for another time. So this is the background here, and as you can see, they go up to the east side of Italy, and they ended up here in Macerata. And so that's what's happening. And we're going to look at the article here in a minute, and it'll show us how many people are getting into Italy, and they're not even sure. They use two different figures, and I think it's much higher than that. They just only admit to a certain amount. So, and I want to talk about one more thing before we go. But let's go back to the article, shall we? See, here, right here, a note on terminology. The BBC uses the term migrant to refer to all people on the move who have yet to complete the legal process of claiming asylum. So in other words, they're illegal. They're illegal invaders are what they are. And I looked up the word migrant. See, BBC just makes up their own meaning of words. I looked up in Webster's dictionary, and it says a migrant is a farm laborer who moves from place to harvest seasonal crops. Now, please tell me how in the world does a guy like this look like a migrant? A migrant, a farm laborer who moves from place to harvest seasonal crops. So, are these people here? Are they going to harvest the olives there in Italy? Are they going to pick grapes for the wines in Italy? I don't think so, folks. So we have BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, which is nothing other than the propaganda arm of the Brits. And we know the Brits have been controlled by the Esau Edomites for hundreds of years, at least since Oliver Cromwell. This group includes people fleeing war-torn countries such as Syria. Well, folks, if the United States and other NATO armed forces weren't in Syria, which is one of the 7 countries that the United States, that general, I can't remember his name, said that we were going to attack. If we weren't in there attacking these countries like Libya and Syria, there wouldn't be a need for people to flee war-torn countries, would there? And who are likely to be granted refugee status, and as well as people who are seeking jobs and better lives, who governments are likely to rule are economic migrants. Well, isn't that special? The governments, now I wonder if the governments actually asked the people, the Italians, if they actually wanted these people. And they don't look like Italians to me. You think these people are interested in eating pasta? My favorite food is spaghetti. You think these migrants, economic migrants, are interested in eating pasta? I don't think so, folks. They're not Italians, and they're not going to assimilate. And this really upsets me, because I had hoped that before I pass out of this life to the next one, that I'd be able to take a trip to Europe and go to my hometown in Belgium, which is basically gone. That place is, I mean, there's no hope for Belgium. They're the home of the European Union, and I was hoping to be able to go through Italy on a train and take my time and go see where my ancestors were from, but there's no way I'm going there now, folks. Italy's gone, France is gone, so is Germany. Europe is gone, folks, and the United States is next. But that's a soapbox for another time. But let's move on, shall we? Notice here it's labeled anti-racism protest. I don't know why the white race is having such a hard time, and the Italians are saying, we don't want these non-Italians in our country. And especially when they do what they did to this young woman, and we'll get to that in just a moment. You see how, and I got it here, that hatred or racism is more evil than the murder and the dismemberment of a young woman. You'll notice here in this article, and I'm going to turn it on here. It says the drive-by attack. Well, let me back up. Several thousand anti-racism protesters have rallied in the central Italian town of Macerata 1 week after a far-right, you notice how they use that label, activists shot and wounded 6 people he thought were migrants. What do you mean he thought they were? What did he do? Make a mistake? I mean, you can't tell. He couldn't tell that these people here are these economic migrants from the heart of Africa. You know, if you read this carefully, the more I looked at this, the more angry I got. And get this. This is all they have to say. The drive-by attack followed the arrest of a Nigerian suspected of murdering and dismembering a local woman. And that's all that this woman who was murdered and her body was cut up and put into 2 suitcases. You know, that doesn't matter. What's important now is that we got people in Italy. The Italians are upset about this. And one man named Luca Traini, he did something about it. But he's a far-right racist because he actually went out and defended or retaliated for the murder. And get this, folks, think about this. Not only did one of these economic migrants, not only did they commit murder, but they cut up the body. Now, how would you like it if your son or daughter was murdered and then parts of her body was put into a suitcase? It reminds me of that couple back there in out of Memphis, Tennessee a few years ago, and I can't remember their names. You see how we forget that young couple that were murdered by those group of blacks, and they were burnt and they were tortured, and the woman had her breasts removed, and they had bleach put down her throat. See, that's forgotten. But crimes like this make the news, and we're supposed to just sit back and accept what's happening to us as the white race. And right here we got more than 500,000, that's 500,000 people have reached Italy since 2014. I'll show you another place here where it says 600,000. See, they don't even know, folks. It could be as many as 1 million, and it could be even more than that. We don't even know how many illegal aliens, economic migrants, are in the United States. But you see how they just put a very soft touch on these, quote, economic migrants who are committing murder. And not only murder, folks. It's one thing to shoot somebody or kill them, but then they cut the body up and put it in a suitcase. So they do mention it down here that the murder of Pamela Mastropietro, 18, whose body was found dismembered and hidden. See, hidden. They used the best possible words. They were stuffed in 2 suitcases a few days earlier, and this is the fellow who's suspected, and I think he's pretty much admitted he did it, Luca Traini. He reportedly made a fascist salute when he was captured, as if that's such a horrible thing. But let's go back up to the top, shall we? So, excuse me, but what is this man doing with his arm up and a fist? Is he just saying hello to the camera? How come that doesn't get a mention? You know, I do wish these guys wouldn't shave their heads and do their tattoos and all that, but, you know, that's the way it is. It makes them look worse than they probably are, but, hey, at least the man is doing something, and I understand that the other Italians are considering this man a hero, and isn't that good news, folks? So here it is again. He reportedly made a fascist salute when he was captured. They got to bring it up again, and he found a gun in his car. Well, big deal, huh? Maybe with all those economic migrants coming in and committing murder and chopping up parts of a young woman and putting him in suitcases, maybe he should be carrying a gun. And you know what? I also noticed they don't have a picture of the young woman who was murdered. Now, if we were here in the United States and somebody murdered a black person or a non-white, their picture would be all over here, and there'd be mourning, and there'd be interviews, but you don't see that here on the article by the BBC, do we? And notice here it's police are saying that it was a racially motivated attack. No, it wasn't. It was an attack against invaders into his country, Italy. And I like it how it says Italians and migrants peacefully carried Italian flags and banners against violence and racism and flew red heart-shaped balloons with the names of the victims of the shooting. We got a lot of cucks there in Italy too, don't we? You notice how they're just peacefully carrying, never mind that they're invading the country, and the Italians are saying we've had enough. And there's an election. And here, see this? 600,000 migrants. First it's 500,000, now it's 600,000. And there's an election on March the 4th coming up in, another week and a half. And then in a sign of widespread and growing anti-migrant, anti-invasion sentiment in Italy, none of the leaders of the main parties attended the march. They got a bunch of cowards out there, see? They know people are getting upset now, so they don't want to show up. And here's a bitch that, one of her fellow Italian females just got murdered and dismembered and stuffed into a suitcase, and she's saying, hey, I'm okay with that. Let's bring in some more, shall we? Unbelievable. And they interview, of course, they don't interview men that are against it. We are here because we want to be a dam against the mountain of hate which is spreading continuously, a social hate against migrants, invaders, and in general against the poor. Francesco Piabecci told Reuters, the political parties are using populism to create hate, terror, and division. Oh boy, they just, never mind that a woman was murdered. That doesn't count. That's not hate. That's just an unfortunate incident. See, the shooter, a 28-year-old Luca Traini, a former Northern League candidate at local elections, told police he was avenging the woman named as Pamela Mastropietro. And then here we have, see, as soon as you get that, you get another quote. Today we are here in Macerata because what happened here was a terrorist act, said Amin Noor, an African invader. We are sorry for what happened to Pamela. It was something horrible, but monsters have no color or origin. They are just monsters. Yeah, well, why don't you keep your friggin' monsters in your own country back in Nigeria? That's the point, you invader. And they do have a mention here of fascist Salvini, a reference to Matteo Salvini, the leader of the right wing. Of course, it's always got to have these labels. Right-wing Northern League Party, which campaigns strongly against illegal immigrants. And then right down below here, and then right here, they have one little quote from this fellow, the leader, Northern League leader Salvini, speaking at a rally in northern Italy, said he was, quote, ashamed as an Italian of the march. You know, I would be ashamed also if I was him. And here we have in a different article, the killings and shootings have traumatized a city unaccustomed to violence of any kind, while laying bare the combustibility of Italy's reckoning with illegal invasion. They call it immigration. Even in a place as Maserati, which has long welcomed newcomers, the strains of an influx that has brought more than 620. See that? One article said 500,000. Another one said 600,000. Now we got 620,000. Now we have 620,000 illegal immigrants or illegal invaders to Italy in the past 4 years have become all too apparent. This was a real awakening, and this, I found this interesting. While earlier generations of asylum seekers fleeing war in the Balkans and beyond have assimilated well, Falcone said, this priest Alberto Falcone, the same cannot be said for those who have come here in recent years, mainly from sub-Sahara Africa, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. Well, the Balkans were mostly white people, folks. That's why they were able to assimilate well. And then I found this opinion on The Guardian. It says Italy is being driven into the arms of fascists, and this woman, Rula Jebriel, and she says the Maserati gun attacks last weekend are a consequence of the anti-immigrant hate speech spewed out by the right-wing party leaders, including Silvio Berlusconi. No, excuse me, bitch. These attacks are the consequence of Italy being invaded by sub-Sahara invaders that have nothing in common with the Italians in Italy. And why you can't see that, or why you refuse to admit that the Italians have the right to be upset and to push back and to defend their fellow Italians when they get murdered and cut up and put into a suitcase. I don't know why you don't get that. And you notice here she said, Italy, my adopted homeland for a quarter of a century, the land of Michelangelo and Galileo, Verdi and Puccini, Bertolucci and Pasolini, Primo Levi and Alini Ferrante, is today brimming with a violent rage that threatens to destroy all that is universally admired about. Exactly. The Italians are upset because these sub-Sahara illegal immigrants are invading their country to the tune of at least 620,000 that they admit of, and my guess it's probably closer to 1 million, and there's no end in sight. And you gotta take some hope. Here she's complaining. Yet today, despite having lived in Italy on and off for over 24 years, when I appear on Italian TV to discuss migration issues and minority rights, I receive more death threats and rape threats than when I appear on CNN to denounce Trump's racism. Well, bitch, maybe the fellow Italians are tired of you invasion and calling it a migration issue, and it's not minority rights. Why don't these people stay in their own country, and why doesn't the United States and other NATO countries stop bombing the shit out of Syria and Libya and other Middle Eastern countries, Iraq and Afghanistan? Why don't you speak out against that instead of denouncing, quote, President Trump's racism? Maybe you wouldn't get as many threats. Huh? Ever think about that? Here she says, Matteo Salvini, the leader of the far-right Northern League, has accused the Democratic Party of flooding Italy with immigrants to replace Italian workers, thereby transforming the nation to a giant refugee camp. He declares that immigrants bring drugs, theft, and violence. Last weekend, the impact of this hate speech was made clear with a drive-by terror attack in Maserati, central Italy. A gunman named as Luca Traini, 28, a candidate for the Northern League in last year's elections, went on a 2-hour shooting rampage in his car, apparently targeting people of color. No, he's targeting illegal immigrants, illegal invaders. Oh, and the worst of worst, oh my God, he found a Hitler's Mein Kampf in his at his home. And she goes on to say, yet the most frightening thing about the Maserati episode is how mainstream, thank Yahweh, thank God, how mainstream Traini's views are. The Northern League has formed a coalition with another far-right anti-immigrant party, Brothers of Italy, as well as with the disgraced former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi. This bloc is expected to win the March election. Well, thank goodness for that, eh? We're going to end it there, folks. I'll put it on the screen here, and you can come back if you'd like to read everything else. Alrighty, I went over to BitChute yesterday, and then there was a little issue there. So I got a hold of Ray Vahey, and I asked him a question: if there's any good news or any news about BitChute. They went to speak out, and then they went back because people complained, and I'm glad he did. He's back to BitChute, and I asked him if there's any news. He said the big news is we are working on a cryptocurrency. We're using a crypto note-based blockchain so privacy will be assured. We're testing it at the moment. It will serve two purposes. Firstly, a record of all videos will be kept there like an index in torrent language. It's called an info hash. Secondly, it will be used to help finance both our ongoing development and creators and the creators such as yourself. We're going to need a lot of help to get it listed on exchanges. That's essential so that it can be converted into other cryptocurrencies and eventually into dollars and other global currencies. Some of that will be people power driven, voting on which currencies are listed, but we still have some preparations to do first. Ray. See? So there's a potential there at BitChute to be able to get reimbursed or to get rewarded, to be compensated for the efforts. And I won't have to be concerned. We won't have to be concerned with being censored like we do on YouTube. I think BitChute is going to have a great future, and I'm looking forward to being more of a part of BitChute. And see, I get a response within an hour or two, within a few hours from Ray. You send an email to YouTube and it goes into Cyberland, and you never hear from anybody. So I'm encouraging you to go over to BitChute and create an account and subscribe to my channel. That's one way we can support each other. I also want to thank those of you who support this channel. The power generator's been running for about 2.5 at least 2.5 hours. So I want to thank you for your support. It helps to pay for the generator. And as you could tell earlier, it was cold. I had to put the blanket on. The propane's running. All that costs money. And I want to thank you very much for supporting this channel in the way that you do, all of you who do. And one last thing before we go. You know, when I ask people here in the United States, where are you from, they usually say, oh, I was born in Michigan, or I was born in South Carolina, or wherever. And when they ask me, where are you from, I say, you know what, my grandparents were from Belgium, and my other grandparents were from Italy. I think we need to begin, I think we need to start to recognize that we're a white race, that we come from Europe, and that we're not, quote, Americans. I'm embarrassed to be an American. I'm not an American. I'm a European. I'm an American of European origin. And we need to start, I believe, to realize that we're of the 12 tribes of Israel. We're of the tribes, the non-Jewish tribes. The Jews, the Esau Edomites, are trying their best and have convinced the majority of the people, the white race, that they are God's chosen, and we only got in the game because the Jews rejected Christ, the Messiah, Yeshua, and because of their rejection, we get in. No, that's not how it goes. The Lord Jesus Christ, the King, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the non-Jewish Judah, he came to save, redeem us, not them. And they have usurped our position, our place, and they've convinced most Americans and most Europeans of that, and especially the Judeo-Christians. So I would suggest that we start to understand our roots, understand who we are, and where we're from, and that the Redeemer came to redeem us, not the migrants from sub-Saharan Africa and all these other non-Israelite nations. And the last thing I want to say is I want to give a special thanks to Michael E. and Tamara for their support. And it's just very encouraging. And I also thank you for your words of encouragement. And may the grace of God our Father, the God of the Israelites, Yahweh, may his grace be upon us all, for we most certainly need it. See ya.